think all games can be accessible?
Old games? Absolutely. I mean,
so all games, as in all games.
Oh, all games. Sorry, I thought you said old games. Even my speech recognition doesn't work with your accent.
Welcome to Access Gaming, the show where accessibility meets gaming. And today I am here with Alex Dunn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Dunn. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Voicify and also the founder of Enabled Play.
Can you tell us what Enabled Play is?
Yeah, so Enabled Play is on a mission to really make accessibility more accessible, mostly in education, the workplace, and in gaming. We do that by basically creating augmented inputs and controls and automation. The goal being to let you use anything that you can or want to as a way to control your games. So that could be voice commands and dictation. That could be body gestures, hand gestures, face expressions, eye gaze, virtual buttons, remapping physical buttons, and doing that alongside all the other amazing tools out there too.
That is really, really cool. So you can like use your face to make like a game character move or jump or things like that?
Yeah, exactly. So you can do things like raise your eyebrows or wink or open your mouth or do like a fishy face or smile or tilt your head. And beyond that, you can even control the sensitivity settings for each individual motion. So for example, I now have a ton of practice raising my eyebrows while using Enabled Play. I get made fun of a lot for doing it on video. So I can raise them, quite high relative to what some other people may be able to do. But if you can't raise your eyebrows very high, or you don't have very fine-tuned control over your eyebrows and want to use them, you can increase the sensitivity so you can do like really, really micro movements to trigger commands. And that could be as simple as like, raise your eyebrows to jump. That's a really common one we see. Or opening your mouth to attack or to shoot, or smiling to reload, or looking down to and up to actually move your camera up and down as well. Really anything. You can create these different profiles that map all these different commands to whatever inputs you want for whatever game you're playing.
That is really cool. So this is something you control to a phone, or is it to your PC? And then you collect it to the game?
So it's right now it's a device that you plug into a PC or a console over USB, and then you communicate to that controller, that device, via a phone, a tablet, or a PC.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so the face expressions, most people use like their phone camera to actually detect it, which is good because then you get a view of yourself as well doing it. The device actually has the microphones on it for voice commands. There's two far field microphones. I can actually sort of rip the top off one of these and show you. So there's two little far field mics here and here, these little black rectangles that have pretty good range, up to about 30 feet for detecting voice commands. And beyond that, the voice commands get more personalized to you over time, learning the way that you talk to it. So you get higher accuracy without having to do a whole bunch of like pre-configuration and calibration. And you can use all those inputs at the same time too, which is really cool. So you can, for example, have a tablet with a whole bunch of these virtual buttons in a grid, like 100 buttons that you might be using. You can use your face expressions and body gestures with your phone camera, and then the microphone with the device itself, all at the same time, and also then mix that up with things like an Xbox adaptive controller or some other keyboard, mouse, or controller of your choosing.
I've heard, I listened to like a podcast you did and you said something about it being able to learn accents and dialects. Like, I'm from Norway. When I ever use like on stream, we have the closed captions or open captions, and the thing make me say a lot of things I never said because it doesn't understand that I have an accent that is not American nor British nor Australian, but I still talk English. So yeah.
We kind of do two different types of speech recognition. One that's for dictation, where you may have some of the same problems, and one that is for commands, and it's far more predictive and optimistic. Beyond just accents, the main reason we did this different approach for voice commands and speech recognition is to be able to make it a feature for people that have their speech pattern affected by their disability. Whether that be someone who's nonverbal but can make lower level and vowel sounds, they can also use voice commands, so the sort of ooh, ah, and e without needing to say a full word. But also for people, for example, something like cerebral palsy that often have speech affected by their disability can also use these voice commands. So rather than being something that needs to predict every single word perfectly, we look at all the commands that you put in a given profile, and we kind of lean into those, and we predict that you're going to say those a little bit more than other words. So we're able to cut through a lot of things like accents and irregular speech patterns in order to be optimistic. But beyond that, it also learns more about you specifically over time. So the more that you use your controller, whether that be the physical one or our new virtual controllers, it starts to understand which commands you're trying to say. And when it's not working, it starts to kind of try to figure out why, essentially.
That is really smart though, because we are like, disability is on a wide spectrum, and how somebody perceives their disability will differ a lot from somebody who other having the same disability. Yes, we have like this overarching thing saying like, I'm disabled, these are the problems I have, but just, yeah. So it sounds like a smart thing that it's able to predict more to the person itself than to what is supposed to be the standard.
Right, exactly. It also means that it can be faster, which, you know, in situations like where we work with folks in schools and in recovery and rehab centers, or like at work, it doesn't need to be insanely fast. But when you're talking about using voice commands in gaming, it needs to be, you know, as fast and ideally as close, if not faster, than a physical input would be, which means in order to do that, we have to be really, really quick with understanding your speech. And so that optimistic side, that predictive side, is not just for cutting through bias and not just for identifying your speech pattern. It's also to be quick. Our go-to example is saying jump, right? In order to hit the space bar, for example, in a PC game. What we're able to do is, because you mapped and said, hey, I'm going to use jump as a voice command for the space bar, we lean into that, and we're able to actually hit the space bar before you even emphasize the P sound. So by the time you're saying jump, it's off, it's gone. It's like, we're confident enough you're going to say jump here. You say it all the time. It's one of your commands. Let's just hit the space bar.
That is cool. And it does take it gives it a bit more feeling of actually working with you, because when you play games, I have cerebral palsy myself, and whenever I'm having a bad day, it's so weird because my brain sort of lags. And I sort of have to tell my body to press the controller. And that isn't how you normally play games. You don't sit there and think, I'm now going to jump, I'm now going to run, I'm now going to press. You just do it by muscle memory. And whenever that slows down, it gets a bit like sticky. It sort of feels like you're in Jello or something when you try and run. So yeah, that is actually really smart. But it sounds like you have worked together with disabled people to be able to get this.
Yeah, throughout the entire process. So the very first research and development I did was actually for my brother. He's about 15 years younger than me, so he's a teenager, and he lives with a few different disabilities. And so the original research that went into it was to solve his problem, specifically in gaming. So like our roots, what we build, has always been built around making games more accessible. Beyond that, we work with other organizations like Able Gamers and Special Effect, that use our devices as well to help more people that are playing with disabilities. But also we have a group of people we lean on that use the devices, and they get early access to features. They'll try them out with us. We'll get feedback. We'll continue to iterate on the features for them and make them as perfect as we can. So the entire process from research to design to the customers we work with range across the spectrum of age and disability, from young children who use it in schools and in some games, all the way to older adults as well, that are just trying to make their computers easier to use as they get older too.
That is really cool. And it's something we hope that a lot of companies will do, that they actually will work with us. We have a saying in Norway, or maybe it is international, but we say nothing with us without us, in the form of like, don't make something without actually asking us who are going to use it. Because if you do, you're just going to have this perceived knowledge that action might not be true. So it's really cool to hear. Yeah, you seem like you're actually being part of the community, and that is cool.
So I love that expression. I like to go one step further now, just based on actually some advice from one of our advisors, Larry Goldberg, and not just, not for us, without us, or not. Really, it should just be not without us. Like in the end, all software and technology should be accessible to everyone. Universal design is really not that difficult. It doesn't really slow things down if you do it intentionally from the beginning. Then that's just not on software. That's in a lot of physical cases as well. But when people don't practice that, they build up on all this scaffolding and all these tools that are leaving people behind. Obviously, we create systemic problems with that, but then it makes it harder for them to take a step back and make these things that were not accessible. And that's why I had to even make Enable Play. I really wish I never even had to do this, that all these games that were developed actually had these different types of inputs and controls and customizability into their stories and into their multiplayer and everything else. But because they're not, in order for them to sort of retroactively fit something like that, you need a lot of scaffolding. You need a lot of very specific tools. And that's what we're trying to provide, at least, not just in gaming, again, just sort of all over the place. But, it's something that, all software, all devices, all games really should be built with people with wide ranges of disability, because that's how the world is. This isn't like we're talking about one person that you have to build one specific thing for out of your billion customers. I mean, there's so many people with so many different ranges of ability, and they're just not being considered in the right way from the beginning. So not for us, without us, just not without us, right? Yeah. Have everyone be involved.
I really, really enjoy this. And it's also really funny. I read, actually yesterday, I read an article that talked about how accessibility and people with disability is actually really forwarding innovation in technology, and that a lot of technology progress we've had has been because somebody with a disability or need for accessibility has said, hey, you need to change this. And when they changed it, it started like a rolling ball, and now it's something everybody uses.
Yeah, we see that a lot. I mean, even in a lot of cases with robotics, so much of modern robotics, like industrial arms, came from people building assistive tech arms for people that had no other way to grab things. It's really fascinating to see. And it's one of those things that, like, you have to just reiterate to people to get them to see it and understand it. I'm a really big fan of the book. I'm forgetting the author. She's out of Google, but it's the Design Build for Everyone. Yeah, I think it's Design for Everyone or Build for Everyone, and she dissects not just like the sort of ethical reasons why, but even just like the value of creating things that, because they're going through a universal design process, create so much more value for everyone, right? It's not that you're building something specifically for someone with a disability, but you're building something for everyone, and you create so much more value that way. I've always loved that concept. It's what we think about and do in terms of our core values at Enabled Play. Building things that should work for literally everyone is the goal.
Yeah, because I did have a question, and that was, do you think something like this would help able people as well? And you have sort of been into it, but I did listen that you talked to the last podcast you were on, or Spotify. I'm going to like put it up on the screen if anybody else wants to go and check that one out. And where you talked about how you use it, or the person used it instead of writing, you could just like talk to it, and then it writes for you in Word.
Yeah, just dictation, right? So exactly. So dictating what you want to type. I was speaking at a conference earlier this week, and it's a developer conference. So I'm speaking to other engineers, and one of the things that I do in my live demos is I issue a challenge. I say, we're all going to try to write this small block of code. I'm going to do it hands-free. I'm going to sit back in my chair, and I'm going to do it with my voice and my face. You can use whatever you want, and we'll race to see who can write this code faster. Now, naturally, I have an advantage because I know exactly what I'm going to do beforehand, and they're, seeing it. But it starts to get people realizing, like, oh, the keyboard and mouse is not the optimal way to do everything. Where I'm sitting on stage writing code with my voice and my hands and doing it at a much faster rate, people start to see that there's this multimodality and this multi-control type of input becomes something that's extremely valuable for anyone, right, of all abilities.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that is an important thing that I think a lot of people need to understand, that when we talk about accessibility, we actually want to take with us everybody. Yes, of course, the most important thing is these people who cannot, in gaming especially, access gaming today. But if we help them, that will take with us everybody else in the end.
Right. We like to say that we want to level the playing field by raising the playing field above everywhere where it is right now. If you just have a higher playing field that includes everyone, then it's level, rather than exclusively trying to bring people up to the current level as to where it's at now.
Yeah. Do you have anything you wish people would know about accessibility?
Oh man, just in general, a whole lot. To people that aren't thinking about accessibility, I would say go talk to someone with a disability, because if you're not thinking about accessibility, you probably haven't. And you're going to realize that the things that you build and the products you create that are not built with a universal design, that are not built with accessibility in mind from the beginning, are leaving these people out. It's not that it's just not inclusive, it's very explicitly exclusive when you do that. That for me is the biggest thing. Think of it from the beginning, talk to people, talk to all of your potential customers and users that you would want. Just from my background in product development, it's the way that you should get the best result anyway. Just make sure that you're not excluding people in that process.
What do you think accessibility is for you?
Oh man. Accessibility for me is having an equitable ability to control technology and the physical world, to have the same opportunity regardless of who you are and where you are to do the same things. For me personally, I use what are typically considered accessibility inputs like enabled play to do my daily job of writing code and building tools and writing emails and even just browsing the web. But really it's about making sure that everyone has an opportunity to participate in essentially the internet, for myself personally, which is such an amazing tool that we've created as a society that it's kind of crazy to think that some people don't get to participate in it. I'll go one step further and say that, when we introduce technology at younger and younger ages, especially in sort of Western society, as early as like preschool, kids like 3 and 4 years old, here in the US anyway, starting to use computers, starting to use laptops, starting to use smart boards, and they're doing things every day with them. When we're not making those accessible to any single student, that student is falling behind at the accelerated rate that these other students get to move forward. Introducing technology at a younger age is great. We get to move a lot faster together. But when you leave people out, they're not included, they're falling behind at that accelerated rate. That's a problem I think we need to solve.
I think that's, yeah, because the gap, if we start earlier, also gets bigger.
Exactly.
I found getting introduced to the internet was a really good thing in my life, because I felt in real life, I didn't understand why I did feel different. I didn't understand why don't I act like everybody else, because the most representation I had around me were either people who were more disabled than me. So I thought, but I'm not as disabled, or they were not able-bodied. So on that field, I was just like, well, I am just lazy. I am part of the able-bodied. I just need to get better, get good. All like the like Elden Ring and like Dark Souls people screaming in the background, get good. No, but like, so when I met the internet, I was just like, whoa, there is a plethora of people like me. What I feel, how I perceive the world is not unique in a good way.
Right.
But then if that stops you, if you have a barricade, you can't access it, then we also stop people for having a community, meeting friends on a level they can meet, learning things, as you said, with learning. So it goes not only the learning part, but also social part. And internet in the Western society is such a big part of like every day, from socializing things, work, learning. So yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, nowadays it's hard to even find a type of career or a hobby that doesn't somehow involve the internet. Which means if it's not as easy to use, everything else becomes harder too.
Yeah. So what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about accessibility?
I think the biggest misconception in general is that, actually going back to what you just shared, where so many people think that accessibility is about helping the relatively small number of people with profound disabilities and lack of complete mobility. And it's really not. It's about everybody in this spectrum of ability. and giving control and giving access. It's not that you have to do things or create things that are for this one specific type of person. It's about just creating things that are inclusive and equitable. At least that's, what I think and see as a misconception from the developer and product builder point of view that we hear all the time. Anyone that is countering accessibility as a sort of core competency that needs to be followed, it's usually the reason they don't understand why and who it's really for, and that it is for everyone. And that's why there's so much value in it.
Yeah, I think that is a common misconception in the gaming world as well. See, a lot of people say like, but I don't need accessibility, or I just have to get good, and all that typical things I hear all the time. But I think people forget that in society in general, either you are sadly go away or die pretty young, or you will encounter some sort of disability in your life. As older we get, things just happen to our bodies, and there is not that much we can do about it. Age comes to us all, hopefully, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But age also comes with things like pain and worse eyesight. You can't sit for too long. Things like these that I think especially young people doesn't think about if they haven't been or met or been around disabled people before.
Exactly. I totally agree. One thing I wanted to share, just to go even sort of further into that point of like the sort of accessibility not just being for the obvious people with mobility challenges, where we see value in some of the folks that we work with in schools, although the same thing applies to gaming. For example, around like 3rd and 4th grade here, so this is, oh gosh, I don't know, like 9 to 10-year-olds, maybe. My math might be totally wrong. And someone who has a kid in 3rd grade is gonna be like, you fool. We start to introduce like typing and keyboard access and things like that in computer labs. Well, one of the stories we have from a student using Enable Play is that they basically developed hand tremors. They didn't know that, right? The parents didn't know that it was affecting them while typing. The teacher didn't know. And the output is just that they were taking a lot longer to learn it, and they were typing significantly slower. That's something that is crazy, that type of student has such a challenge compared to their peers, where, that's our goal, is to kind of just be like, well, typing is harder, so let's give you other options. Let's give you the ability to dictate. Let's give you the ability to control it with your voice or your face or your body in different ways, in order to make these things more accessible where the keyboard and mouse might not be. And that student, is not, if you look at the child just standing there, is not something that someone would be like, that's a disabled child. But that's a person who would grow up to have so many more challenges in life with regards to technology access and participating on the internet, playing games with their friends and so on, that we can sort of start to intercept with these concepts of anything as an input.
Yeah, because the internet and all of these things are supposed to make us more quick, and it's supposed to make it easier for everybody, and it's supposed to be like, writing on a keyboard is often more accessible than writing by hand. Yeah. But then it has a gate that like, well, yes, for many this is true, but for some that is not true at all. And we need to help them. They should, especially when it comes to school and learning, they should be able, everybody, to get like the minimum of learning.
Yeah,
like exactly. On the same level with everybody else.
Yeah, man, you just create more disadvantages throughout. Like, well, now it takes longer to write a research paper, and by the time they're in high school, and while other people are in high school and they can write a research paper in an hour, and therefore they get to go participate in sports and other after school activities, it takes you 4 hours. And now you don't get to, not just is it harder to do the work, you're also losing out on all these other opportunities because you're spinning on the keyboard rather than just getting the work done from what you're cognitively able to do in your schoolwork.
So going a bit back to the system. So you said you can connect it to gaming. Can you connect it to gaming consoles as well? I know one of the things I have a lot of meeting with when I meet people with disabilities or myself is that Nintendo aren't the most accessible here. Is that something people can use then, connect it to, like, say, their Switch, or hasn't become that far yet?
Yeah, so right now for the Switch and for the PlayStation 5, most people are using converters like a Cronus or a Titan stick, like the Titan One, or like a GameSir Aimbox or something like that in order to do the conversion. We're working on that though. We're working with a number of the different console manufacturers in order to make enabled play work natively on those devices without needing to now go purchase another expensive tool. But yeah, so currently we do have some support with Xbox, and they've been an amazing group to work with. They genuinely care about accessibility through their entire team, and the accessibility teams at Microsoft are also individually amazing people. But we're working on that native console support to make it as easy as just plugging it into whatever you want to use and start using it.
Do you think all games can be accessible?
Old games? Absolutely. I mean,
So
like
all games, as in all games.
Oh, all games. Sorry, I thought you said old games. Even my speech recognition doesn't work with your accent.
That old Norwegian accent. No, all game, as in every game.
Every game, yes. I think it depends on how accessible, I guess. But my goal is, yes, absolutely, that all games should be made accessible. You know, there's so many that are, and a lot of the reasons that they are for physical inputs anyway, which is obviously my area of focus, is they just require not that many inputs at the same time. But then you go to the total opposite end, to Dark Souls and Elden Ring and competitive first-person shooters. And that's where we're trying to create more accessibility. And that's why we say we want to make accessibility accessible, and not just give you the input to be able to say, wow, you pulled the trigger that shot the gun in the first person shooter. We did it. We made these inputs accessible in Call of Duty. Instead, we want to be able to make it so that you have enough control, regardless of your abilities, to compete in this game and play it in a way that's fun for you. I think we can get there. It's just a matter of configuration and a matter of control. Now, with regards to the other side of accessibility with understanding rather than control, that's a different challenge, because that requires the developer to do some work in order to make their game more universally accessible. And I think that new games can get there, and there's been such an amazing wave of developers starting to really consider it. Ubisoft does an amazing job. Their team on accessibility is great. Xbox Game Studios is doing a much better job over the last few years, but there's still so much work to do. So in that case, for all games, you know, I think it's going to be a lot harder to retroactively make any past games accessible like that. But I think in terms of control and command and input devices and ways to play the game, I think we can get there and have every game be accessible to everyone.
That's cool. But you said Elden Ring and Dark Souls. I have dabbled a bit into them, and one thing I noticed when I play them is that you have to use more than just one. It's not nearly never one command.
It's like four like buttons and two joysticks at the same time.
Yeah. How do something like Enable Play counteract that?
Yeah, so actually we have I can send this to you after. We have a great video about using Enable Play in Elden Ring. Also, the first research and development, first game we try to make accessible is Dark Souls, because I am one of those Souls freaks who has his friends over and we do these crazy competitive runs late at night. And yeah, so big passion of mine to make From Software games more accessible.
That is cool though. Yeah. That is hard also, because that community is so split. On one side, people are just like, yeah, everybody play. On the other side, it's just get good.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I could say get good, but you can't get good if it's impossible, right? Like you could say get good as in like learn the patience, learn the timing, blah, 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 but not get good if I can sit here and do this crazy claw configuration on my controller and you can't. So what we do with Enable Play is we augment any of these physical inputs with voice and face. So especially things like and for those who have not played Elden Ring that are watching this, one of the most common things you have to do is hold triangle if you're on a PlayStation controller, or hold Y, and then also hit the D-pad or like an X or a trigger at the same time while you're also moving. So you have both joysticks going. You have to hold that top triangle or Y button and then hit all these different buttons in order to do things frequently. It's like switching weapons while you're in the middle of a fight, or switching the spells you're going to use. And of course, because it's Elden Ring, you have to do that while running away and dodging at the same time. And so one of the things the first thing I did was like, I'm just going to make a voice command for anything that is underneath that like sub menu of triangle. Anything where I have to do this weird maneuver with my hands, or I got to like bring my pointer finger up over triangle and switch these to be the triggers. No, I'm not doing that anymore. It hurts my hands. I'm sick of it. I can't even imagine what it is doing to people with mobility challenges that are trying to play this game. So we use voice and face commands for it. So we can do things like have a lock on the triangle if you have your eyebrows up. So you could have your eyebrows up and then give a voice command, or have your eyebrows up and then press any other physical button too, in order to have it so you don't have to claw anymore. Or things like mount or switch weapons, like those are just voice commands. I just say switch weapons, or I say 2-hand, left 2-hand, right heavy attack, jump, mount, heal, switch items, next spell, and everything in between to just offset it, so that my physical focus with my hands in particular is on the joysticks, so I can keep my movement going and then do those secondary actions, or they're really primary actions, but augment them with these other inputs.
Nice. It sounds like, because I was thinking that, like, how do you do that combination? But it seems like there's something you have thought about.
Yeah.
And I was also going to ask you what your favorite game is, but I do think
it's Elden Ring.
Got it. Yeah,
I actually my favorite game of all time is Sekiro, which is another From Software game, but I would say followed very quickly by Elden Ring, and then all of Dark Souls. And although I do play a lot of first-person shooters with my wife and my friends as well, we have a lot of fun. I've been playing Warzone since it came out and really haven't stopped. But yeah, big fan of From Software games for their challenge, and it also gives me a challenge to try to make those inputs accessible too. So it's sort of double the fun.
It is really cool, because as I said, it is often, when I talk about this, it is often people who just say, no, it's supposed to be hard, it's going to be hard. So you have put on yourself like a big challenge on top of a challenge, which I think it's really cool. It shows that you're in for this. You actually want to make that change, and yeah, really nice.
Yeah, you start from the hardest game. I assume we can make the rest of them pretty easy too.
Yeah, and that makes sense though, because like if there's anywhere you're going to meet a challenge, it is those games.
Yeah.
So yeah, cool. Do you have any favorite accessibility you like to use in games?
I love remapping inputs. It's if the game cannot remap inputs, I'm always like, now I got to go into like some other tool, or I got to go into like my Steam configuration for my controller and go change things up. For me, that's the easiest thing. My favorite that I've seen though is people that augment visuals and audio in different ways. So, for example, Ubisoft has started doing this in a number of their games, where instead of requiring audio to hear like someone coming towards you or stepping towards you, they'll do indication on the side. They'll glow in a certain area. They'll visually show that there is audio happening. That I think is one of those just beautiful universal designs that makes the game accessible without impacting immersion or gameplay. They do it in such an amazing way that it's beautiful looking. It's fun to see. You don't need to be hard of hearing in order to appreciate the value. But if you are hard of hearing, now you get to have that same understanding of the environment in the game that you're in. So that is probably the favorite that I have that I've seen, that I don't necessarily have to depend on, but is just an amazing tool.
Yeah, if you saw a little bit of a cut now you on YouTube, it's just because we talk too much. We needed to start a new meeting. Zoom said, no, you guys are too talkative. So we needed to start a new meeting. I hope this will be the same quality as earlier. But we talked about Elden Ring and Dark Souls being your favorite, Sekiro,
yeah.
Thank you. Being your favorite games. Yeah. Do you have any favorite games from like your childhood?
Oh, man. I always go back to Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for me.
Yes.
It was the first, like, I think long game that I beat as a child. And it was one of those ones where, like, I got to the adult water temple and I was stuck for so long and I couldn't figure out the puzzle and I had to come back a week later and then finally figured it out. There's like that big just moment of triumph. I'm like, wow, I did it. And also what an amazing story. So yeah, Ocarina of Time, really all of the Zelda games are sort of what raised me quite a bit. And then I also played growing up a lot of like NHL games. Me and my family are always big hockey fans. So playing like the NHL and 2K games with my brothers and stuff was always fun.
Yeah, I did the FIFA. I was on a FIFA hype when I was a kid. I'd never played football outside, like never ever. I was deadly afraid of doing that. But the game, so much fun, so much fun.
So much easier than actually running up and down the pitch. You just
yes, I can't get like my knees hurts. Don't hurt when I play it, believe it or not. But it's so fun that you're talking about the feel of empowerment. When I do, every time I talk about my experience growing up as a disabled gamer, empowerment is like the one thing that goes through again. Gaming for a lot of children is empowerment. It is the feeling of being able to do something for the first time without this socially construct pressure on you that children have. Like there is nobody saying you have to do this within a week because you're going to be tests. Right. It's not anyone saying like, but you should have gone this far. You should have been able to walk so far by now. You should be able to run this far. It's just like, here's a game. Here's a puzzle. And if you can't do this puzzle, come back a half a year and you can try a game. The game doesn't, it isn't mean to you if you can't do it. It just says, try again.
Right, exactly. Unless you have older siblings like I did, and then they say you have to beat the water temple in under a week or we're going to make fun of you for the rest of your life.
So yeah, again, the game is nice, but social pressure. I have an older sister as well, but she wasn't that like patient when it comes to gaming. So I was allowed to game with her, like Final Fantasy. I wasn't technically allowed to play Final Fantasy because my mom was really strict, like with age. But she was okay because my sister is 7 years older than me, and she was okay that I played the game if I were with my sister. My sister did not have patience, so when she could do something, she just like, and gave me the controller, and I was just like, yay, I'm going to take the big boss. And she was just like, you better do it or you are not going to be able to sit here with me anymore. So yeah, what is the future for Enable Games? What is the things you're hoping that you can be able to do?
For us, it's really just trying to see more games be playable by more people. To be able to play competitive multiplayer games with anyone, to play with my friends who have disabilities in competitive, fast-paced games without them having to have that feeling of pressure that I need to try to do more in order to keep up with my able-bodied friends that I'm playing with. And at a sort of macro level outside of gaming, it's to solve that systemic problem of technology not being accessible to people and the systemic issues it creates when we're accelerating so quickly, especially over the last sort of 5 years, the way that technology has been moving, making sure that everyone gets to participate in that at the same level, all times from the beginning of when they start to get introduced to technology. That's where we see it going, is a human computer interaction model that just works for everyone and is inclusive and accessible.
And if anybody wants to look at this product or talk to you or figure out more about it, where can they find you? Where can they find your project? Where can I find you? How can I contact you if you have any questions?
Yeah, so we're Enabled Play everywhere. So enabledplay.com. We're Enabled Play on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. And then I'm Suave Pirate on all things internet, mostly because Alex Dunn is a very ordinary name. And so being Alex Dunn on the internet is hard to be recognized. But I'm Suave Pirate from the name generator I wrote when I was 10. On Twitter, on Twitch, even on LinkedIn, my URL is Suave Pirate. So wherever you need to find me, my DMs are always open. So if you either want to reach out to the Enabled Play team on those channels or out to me directly, if you ever have questions or are curious to learn more about it, you can always find me on Twitter.
Yeah. And if people want to buy this box, is this something they can buy international, or is it now US specific now?
No, yeah, you can buy them everywhere. The caveat being right now, depending on when you're watching this, when this was recorded, the only voice commands that we support are English. But of course, it does start to learn. So there's kind of some ways to work around it. But we are shipping more languages, basically all the UN languages, Spanish, French, German, Norwegian. I got you. Dutch, Portuguese, and a few others that'll be coming out shortly. But yes, we do ship everywhere. We have devices from the UK to the west coast of the US to Hong Kong and China. And basically everywhere in between, folks that are using these devices to control their technology and to play more games.
Cool. I have one last question. it's the hard-hitting question of the day. No, it's
Ooh,
not.
fun.
No, it's not. It's your logo. I am sorry. We need to have a small little appreciation of your logo.
Oh, appreciation? Or
yes.
I thought you were going. You were gonna hate it. I was like, whoa! I spent so much time thinking about that and designing it.
It's so cool. I just need people to like get it up on the screen, show it, because I saw that on your internet site yesterday when I did some research, and I was like, that's cool. That's a smart logo, and it's so cute.
I know, it's adorable, but it's not like too cutesy that you can't also like appreciate it from outside of like, you know, little games. But yeah, I mean, the octopus is an adaptive animal. It's incredibly cunning. It has so many arms to use so many different inputs. When it is injured, it is able to regenerate. It is able to overcome so many challenges. It felt like the perfect representation of what we're trying to do and what our devices and our platform are trying to be. Plus, it does look adorable.
It does.
Which is amazing. Yeah, we've really leaned into it.
Yes, but as somebody who like does like the branding on Twitch and you think about all of these things, I watched like your internet site and I was just like, damn, that's smart. Damn, that's smart. And that's cute. But Alex, thank you so much for coming here today to talk to me. Thank you so much for taking your time to making this product. I am really looking forward to show people this. And again, thank you so much for taking your time.
No, thank you so much for having me. I was immediately, I think, DM'd you the second I saw your tweet looking for people to talk about it. You know, we're excited to keep solving these problems and make new devices that just help more people.
Yes, and if you at home know anybody that you want to get on this show, please let me know. I am a Revia everywhere. You can just DM me, and may you all have a great evening, morning, or afternoon, wherever you're around the world. See you guys. Bye.